The CDC states that since the COVID-19 pandemic began, 1 in every 3 children has been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, such as anxiety or ADHD. And it's more important than ever to learn how and to teach techniques to help reduce stress and anxiety. Today's guest is Dr. Michele Borba. Dr. Borba is an internationally renowned educator and an award-winning author of 24 books. She is a motivational speaker, having spoken in 19 countries on 5 continents, and has served as a consultant to hundreds of schools and corporations like Sesame Street, Harvard, the U.S. Air Force Academy, and the Royal Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. Dr. Borba is an NBC contributor who has been on countless shows including Today, Dateline, Dr. Oz, Anderson Cooper, CNN, and more. Her work is featured in Time, Washington Post, Newsweek, Boston Globe, U.S. News and World Report, and many others. Her proposal, Ending School Violence and Bullying, SB 1667, was signed into law in California in 2002. I'm your host, Chris Parker, and this is the Easy Pray Podcast. Dr. Borba, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Pray Podcast today.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this. Thank you, Chris.
You're very welcome. Can you give myself and the audience a little background about who you are and why you started doing what you're doing?
Well, right now I'm an educational psychologist and I'm a writer. I've had the immense fortune to actually speak on 19 countries and with a million parents and teachers. But I started as a special needs teacher myself. And I began to see that despite the fact that some kids were diagnosed with severe learning issues or emotional problems, some of them were doing okay. So it's really, Chris, been a 40-year journey to try to figure out why some kids struggle and others shine. And I figured it out. It's resilience. It's teachable. And my last book is called Thrivers. And that's all about what we can do to reboot our parenting and help all of our kids in this pandemic generation make it.
I was about to say, and this is particularly relevant. I mean, you've been doing this for 40 years, but it's kind of like your entire career is leading up to dealing with a pandemic and how kids handle it and how parents handle it.
You know, the timing was absolutely, it wasn't planned. Let's put it that way. But I was seeing a trend that I think everybody needs to be aware of. Prior to the pandemic, my concern and why I wrote Thrivers is 1 in 5 American kids was diagnosed with a mental health disorder, some kind of anxiety. Then came the pandemic. And now the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics says it's 1 in 3. And we are in a national crisis that's unprecedented, which means mental health comes first and foremost. A crisis only amplifies a pre-existing issue. And that's okay. We've got it. We can figure it out. And science is on our side. Resilience is teachable. That's what I hope we can get in and dive into so we can do things, Chris.
Awesome. So do you think that the 1 in 5 being diagnosed with a mental health disorder prior to the pandemic, is that more of an issue of us being able to do a better job diagnosing and realizing what's going on, or do you think there actually are more issues, more mental health disorders now?
I think there's more mental health disorders. And the reason for that is we have stellar scientists who are tracking per decade this generation versus that generation versus that. And each generation of decades, we're seeing an upswing in it. Now, why? It's not DNA in the water, but we have discovered that a lot of times we got ourselves into a culture because we parent based on our culture that was based on the test scores, the GPA. We removed the kids' play 101. It became less time with us, just able to relax. Oh, this thing called a cell phone came into their lives. So they were looking down, not up. Empathy scores went nosediving 40% in 30 years, said Sarah Conrad's work. So the first thing is, let's not be so quick to put the finger as to here's why. We do know there is a problem. And now we're going to flip it to see, okay, so what are we going to do about it? And we better.
So let's talk about that. What are some of the mental health disorders and the challenges that we're seeing? And then what can we do about it?
Well, the first thing is the challenges are just a tsunami of why anxiety is peaking. There's nothing absolutely picture perfect than uncertainty, fear, and this anxiety ridden of what will happen next. In addition, our kids are worried to death about financial situations, grandma passing away. Will I get it? I mean, it's just absolutely a tsunami of anxiety. But I got into this work, and I just have to mention her name, Her name is Dr. Emmy Werner. She was a child psychologist from the University of California, Davis. Just so everybody knows, Chris, this is science-based stuff. She had the same question that we all have. She was growing up as a kid during World War II in Germany and asking herself, my gosh, how are we going to make it? And then what she did was go back and get her degree in psychology and began the most amazing study of over 678 kids all growing up at the same time with facing severe adversity, homelessness, poverty, sexual abuse, domestic abuse. She studied the same kids for 40 years and found that about 10 years into the study, she's blown away. A surprise, surprise. 1/3 of them are making it despite the adversity. Then she goes into the why factor, and two things kept coming in, and here's our first roadmap. The first is adults who refuse to give up on the kids. They're calm themselves. And they are caring champions. If not the parent, it's the coach or grandma or the lady down the end of the street. But the second thing is the kids had learned ordinary, simple protective buffers. So when the adversity came, they knew how to handle it. They were prepared, kind of like what our Army is now doing for our military. They're preparing them. So the PTSD is actually going down because they have that preparedness. Now, we're talking about the 7 most highly correlated traits. That's what each chapter in Thrivers is. So what are the teachable ones that we can make a difference? They're confident kids. They know what their strengths are. They have hobbies and interests that they go to. The second one is they have a sense of empathy. They have social connection, or they know how to connect with others. Not that they have 50,000 friends.
I was about to say, which is separate social connections. You really mean like people that they spend time with, that they interact with in person, and that it's not an online.
Not online.
Connection.
It's called face to face, and they know how to make new friends. That piece seems to be pivotal. And we're seeing one of the reasons why anxiety is going up so much right now, our Surgeon General is saying, is we're all in a state of loneliness. Okay. The third one is self-control. Obviously, we're all edgy, but our stress is building. So how do we keep the stress down without going into high levels of anxiety? The fourth one is integrity. Interestingly enough, for some of our kids, particularly middle school and high school, the challenge is peer pressure. Going against the grain of your values. You got to know what you stand for so you know what to say no to. Then comes curiosity, which is mind-boggling. But resilient children are problem solvers. They don't wait for mommy and daddy to solve it for them. We have made a mistake by helicoptering, hovering, and doing it for them. Instead, these kids go, okay, this is what I'm going to do instead. They're practicing brainstorming. Then comes perseverance. They don't give up. They keep on going. But you can't persevere unless you've got some of those other traits going for you, right? And the seventh one is, no surprise, optimism. We're living in a very fear-based, pessimistic time, but thrivers find some kind of a silver lining. They're reality-based, but they don't let pessimism erode their thinking so depression rises. They know how to counter it, and all that stuff is teachable, Chris.
So how do we spot when our kids are not having the confidence, the social connections, the self-control, integrity, curiosity, perseverance, and optimism? How do we spot those things in them from their behavior?
Number one is we listen to the other teachers who know the kids well. We connect with people who know our children, and we honor their opinions. The reason for it, Chris, is our kids act differently in different social settings. So when the teacher says, hey, he's really risk adverse, and you're going, but he's not at home, that's an issue to say, The second thing is watch your child. Watch your child a little carefully in different situations, and watch your own radar go up. I use TOO. Is your child too different than is normal? Is it spilling over into too many other areas? Are you seeing too much of a dramatic change? Are you seeing that this is raising your radar too much? Then that means something's going on. Every kid has a bad day, Chris. Every one of us has a bad day. But I also would suggest to a parent is track it without the kid watching you, but take a calendar and just track. Where are you seeing these overt new changes or these behavior patterns? Or we're seeing, for instance, right now, teachers are saying the kids are more irritable. They are more frustrated more easily. They're more cautious. There are separation anxiety. Not all of those, but are you noticing those? Track it on a calendar. And I swear to you, what you'll see is a pattern. It doesn't happen all the time, but you'll go, oh my gosh, it's 3:00 only on Thursday. What's going on at 3:00 on Thursday? Maybe it's the daycare, or maybe it's that soccer coach. You can sometimes prevent some of this, but if it's all the time, pick up the phone and get some mental help immediately.
And I think it's one of the things that has changed, I think, significantly since you and I were children, is that getting mental health help is now very socially acceptable in many communities. Saying, I need some help is much different than what it was when we were children.
That's probably a savings grace that's going on right now. Unfortunately, it's still a little bit too stigmatized.
Yeah.
But the worst thing I'd hear from a parent, if only I'd picked up the phone. Don't be the if only parent. Our children are hurting. It's predictable that they will be more anxious. All we need to do is be the parent and be proactive. How great for the doctor to say everything's fine.
And even if it's just, well, let me give you your child some tools to help, hey, there's nothing major going on, but let's help with some tools to pique their curiosity or help their self-control.
You know what, Chris? It doesn't make any difference who the kid is, whether they are knee deep in a mental health crisis or they look like they're fine. Every child needs protective buffers. We have got to give them those tools. What I tried to do in Thrivers is give you dozens of them. Each idea is age related. Don't do them all or your kid will never let you read another book again. But find what works for your kid, what your child needs, and don't give up, because that is the grace of resilience, is that the child has different kinds of adversity hitting him. So it's not a cookie cutter approach, and it's not one thing that's going to help. You got to give your kid a range of ideas. And this is not an overnight process. This is your new parenting toolkit that's going to last from toddler to teen or however it is that they're with you until they finally can thrive without you.
So what are some of the buffers that we need to help the kids build in? And, are there particular scenarios where one buffer is better than another?
Yes, there's always scenarios. The problem is we don't know which scenario the kid's going to need it for. So there's the problem. The first one is, aim for the kid's strengths. Does he have a hobby? One of the most fascinating things came out from studies by Emmy Matson, phenomenal researcher, again, in resilience. And she said, we're missing something. It's ordinary things that are making extraordinary differences, like magic in our kids' lives. Hobbies. I don't care if it's guitar or books or walking or exercising or meditation. Kids say, give us a repertoire of stuff. Meditation works for some kids, but not for others.
Yeah.
But find what works for your kid and build it in or carve in that time, because the hobby becomes a decompressor. He's going to be able to use it in college, and she can use it when she comes home from school. So watch that child.
And would that be like I can see like some kids, it might be non-competitive sports.
Yes.
But I could see that like competitive sports could actually work against you in some cases if you've got too many of them going on, or it just becomes overwhelming on the competition aspect.
Yes. Well, we can watch Olympians right now who said I got overwhelmed because of the competition. What our kids need when you talk about a hobby, it doesn't mean it's a sport or an activity that is something that's on his agenda. It means he's choosing it. It gives him a sense of eagerness. There's a need for it. He's the one pushing you for it, not you pushing him for it. And he can use it wherever. For instance, and don't overlook the simple stuff. I asked Natalie, a 14-year-old, what are you doing to get rid of the stress that you see is mounting? She says, music. My mom started playing music around the house. I didn't realize it works. I said, so what are you doing? She says, well, Mozart's amazing. I said, really? She said, go figure. But I started loading it into my iPad, and that's what I use whenever I start getting jittery. I said, so what are you doing when you're doing a good job? She says, got that covered. It's Elton John. I'm still standing, and I start pulsing around the house. One kid said it's goldfish. I start watching my goldfish go round and around and around, and it soothes me. Glitter jars work for other kids. A calm down corner in your house that your kid can put together. Like, I don't care what it is. It could be nothing more than, for some kids, it's books. Getting into a problem of another character is bibliotherapy. But it's finding what works for your child. So that would be one.
Or adults. I love taking my dog for a walk.
Exactly. Thank gosh for dogs. We finally realized that they're wonderful. Pets can be glorious for your kids. Most kids say their pet is fabulous. One girl says it's my hamster. But so hobbies can be one for that confidence level. How about self-control? Best things I ever learned in my life, Chris, I worked on 18 Army bases.
Oh, wow.
And commanders said, you should be talking to the Navy SEALs. We're retraining them to prepare them for real tough adversity. Well, they're the most elite forces we have. When I talked to Navy SEALs, I said, what are you guys doing? He says, simple stuff you should be teaching kids because it keeps the adversity down and our stress down. The first thing we do is start identifying our stress signs. We start looking for each other and we can point it out. You're starting to get stressed because you're doing like this to your hands or you're gritting your teeth or you can feel it in your heartbeat. It's different for every child.
Yeah.
Maybe the first couple of weeks is watch each of your kids and figure out what their stress sign is because they need to be able to immediately then when they feel it, tell themselves what a Navy SEALs does, chill or relax or I got it inside their head. And then they say, teach your kid a 1-2 breath. You can do it anywhere in the world, and it is the fastest way to calm down, getting oxygen into your brain. You take a deep, slow breath from your abdomen. Tell your kid like you're riding up an elevator. Then you keep focusing on the breath. You hold it. I'm so relaxed from that one breath. It's like amazing. I hold the breath, and then they say, now keep focusing, but slowly let it out. Keep thinking of the breath. It'll take a kid a long time to practice it right. But the exhale needs to be twice as long as the inhale. You will then maximize your relaxation process. Now, why not practice that around the house with your kids as a family? We're just as stressed as the kids, if not more so. So let's do it together.
I use that technique for helping to go to sleep. Just very controlled breathing, thinking about, bringing in the calm, exhale the anxiety, let the stress go, and just focusing on the movement of the air. Like it's to me, like it doesn't seem like that should work. Like thinking about breathing, how could that de-stress me? How could that? But somehow it really does make a difference. It
really does. You know what they've actually put, like monks, they brought them over from, can you imagine this, from Tibet. They've been practicing meditation for years. They put them in MRIs and discovered that the part of their brain where compassion is 5 times larger than the rest of ours because of the practice. And there goes the biggest problem we do as parents. We teach the kid, but we don't have them practice it. Mm-hmm. So you find simple little ways to keep exercising whatever works for their kid until they can do it wherever. Because when adversity hits, what goes fastest is your cognitive capacity. You can't think when you're stressed.
Yeah.
So get rid of the stress. And I don't care for whatever the situation is, whether it's bullying, you're in the process of an accident, you're up against a major situation of, a school shooting. You've got to be able to think and you've got to practice in the here and now.
Is that kind of similar? I've talked with some Navy SEALs and people in the military, and some of their training is so much about repetition.
Yes.
And dealing and doing things such that it just becomes muscle memory. Even if it's cognitive stuff, it's just so ingrained in who they are that they don't even think that they're doing it because it's just built in. So if we teach our kids how to do these things when it's not in a crisis, then when the crisis happens, they have it as kind of a muscle memory skill.
You nailed it. In fact, there was a team I've been doing dozens of focus groups with kids on what works, what doesn't work, what do you need. He said the most important thing every kid needs is ways to manage stress that we can use anywhere, any place. But he said the biggest problem is you guys are teaching us as a health unit. We can't just remember that stuff if you do it like a one semester in freshman year. Mm-hmm. We've got to keep figuring out how to keep practicing it over and over again. And we got to practice the thing that works best for each of us personally. That's certainly number 3 as a chapter in Thrivers, and that's highly correlated. Thrivers can think straight because they can put the brakes on impulses. Mm-hmm. And that allows them to get through the process. Now, number 5 would be curiosity, problem solving. And that's another one that's pretty darn simple if we start doing this at a very early age. Thrivers can think outside the box. When a challenge comes, they don't raise the white flag. Instead, they say, okay, here's what the problem is. They identify it. Here's what I'm going to do to storm my brain of thinking what else I can do for possibilities. Mm-hmm. Many of our kids are giving up. And one of the reasons is we've been rescuing them. From this moment on, you do a whole reboot as a parent. When your kid comes home or you see him at home and he's struggling and he's obviously got a problem, be non-judgmental, be calm yourself, sit down and say, what's bugging you, sweetie? As soon as he says it, okay, thank you for telling me. Now let's figure out what you could do differently next time, what you can do, not mommy telling you. If you brainstorm it, for kids who go, how long do I have to do this? Get a 1-minute sand timer. They're a godsend until the sand runs out. If you keep doing it and you keep doing it, what happens is they practice it until I heard one kid say, I'm just storming my brain. I know the answer's in there. I just got to figure out what else I can do. Yes, that's exactly it. And that's what a thriver does. He's got access to these protective buffers that they're practicing over and over again. So maybe the big thing as a parent to say is, which of these does he already have? Or which of these am I modeling to my child? Because chances are he's got them, you know.
Or we need to start doing these ourselves as adults. That way we actually can coach our kids on these things.
Well, here's another one that's real simple. Once again, simple stuff. Optimism. Hope. In a pessimistic world where our kids have been seeing a daily death count for the last 2 years, they begin to erode that sense of, gee, the world is a good place and there's hope out there. So what do? The simplest one, actually, this is from University of Pennsylvania, and it's called just readjusting and reappraising a situation so that you don't always say, oh gosh, it's all going to be bad. I can't get out of it. The doom and gloom. If pessimism keeps on, it erodes your optimism and hope, and then pretty soon it becomes permanent. But they've discovered that one of the fastest ways is if a parent actually starts modeling it. For instance, legitimate, I'm really frustrated. That's okay, I'm strong, I can get through it. Come up with one mantra, and you say it out loud so that it doesn't look like you're trying to teach your kid, but you're authentically trying to do it. What happens is mind-boggling. Is you say it enough, your voice becomes your kid's inner voice. He picks it up and does it himself. It's okay, I can get through it. Or come up with a family mantra yourself. We got this, we're strong together. Many families have done that over the last 2 years, and it's really works. Many parents say, our kids are now saying, we got it, Mom. Don't worry about it. We can get through it.
Do things like, volunteering for charities,
yes.
things like that, does that help build optimism?
Oh, I love it. It is one of the best untapped ways to not only build empathy, but also reduce stress. If it is relevant and meaningful to the kid, not like it's going to look good on the service learning project. Example on that, a group of Glenbard kids from, this is Illinois, said they were so worried during COVID about some of their friends who didn't have access to the counselors. They said, we were really worried. We knew they were depressed. So we decided as a group, we did social distancing, but each one of us took a task and we decided we were going to make some quarantine gift bags. I said, what's in the gift bag? Well, one kid's good at baking, so she made homemade cookies. Another kid's good at making a note, so she'd always write the note. Another kid decorated the outside. And I just took my bike and dropped off the bag each day for a different kid's house at their driveway. I said, how did it work? He said, it was unbelievable, Dr. Borba. Every day the kid would call up crying, thanking us and saying, I didn't know anybody cared. And every day we'd cry because we realized we'd made a difference and we'd have to make another quarantine gift bag. Just we started to realize we could make a difference and our hope started to rise up. That's exactly what it is. It's called, one of the best ways right now is if you've gone through suffering, tune it into altruistic suffering. So you find a way to give back, not get. And it actually starts reducing your stress and opening up your empathy, and you find hope.
Yeah, I love hope as a motivational tool of refocusing and resetting through hope and serving. Yeah, that resonates with me.
Oh, good. 1 point.
Woohoo! Oh gosh, now I'm emotional from that one.
Yeah. Oh, I am too. Usually I have to have Kleenex to get through, but the best ideas during all of this last 2 years have come from kids. When I ask the kids what's working for you, and they come up with, again, simple, ordinary things like putting Mozart on my iPad, or we do driveway drop-offs, or those kinds of things. Sidewalk chalk. I was really concerned about my brothers. So my little brothers and sisters, so a group of us around the neighborhood started doing sidewalk chalk markers and just nice things outside that said about kindness. And our brothers and sisters that were kindergarten would come out and smile. And then they started making the hearts too. It made us feel better.
I definitely saw a lot of that in our neighborhood of people
Yeah.
writing on their driveways and things like that,
Yeah.
and trying to encourage one another. Particularly early on in the pandemic, there was a lot of that, and uh,
Well, you know what that is? That's empathy, because instead of helping the kid think about me and be overwhelmed with what you're doing, you stretch the kid to think we.
yeah,
And what a difference that makes. And again, that's an intentional parenting moment. That would be chapter 2 on dozens of ways to build empathy. Watch the kinds of images that your children see. Be very intentional on selecting good stuff. Or a simple thing that NYU would say, go to the back page of the newspaper every day and find real live good stuff that kids are doing. It's usually in paragraph form. So blow it up, paste it on an index card, and start good news reports every night. What happens is kids start looking for the good stuff. Right now it's in dormant mode, and they don't see it nearly enough. But wow, when they see that, they start seeing the world as a better place. Their hope starts to come alive and their empathy goes up.
I think it was. Let's see if I can get the actor's name right. John
Yes.
Krasinski was
Yes.
doing his good news.
Yes. Yes. I love
Yeah.
Lester Holt is doing at the end of most NBC Nightly Hour. Here's the good news today. And that's what we need to do. We need to amplify the good news for our children.
And I suppose the opposite of that would be like, turn off the news,
Yes.
turn off social media, turn
Yes.
off these things that cause anxiety, that cause strife,
Yes.
and focus on others. Take a pause from that kind of stuff.
Well, you want empathy. You want social connection. The way you learn that, the gateway, is face-to-face connection. I got to see your face in order to see, oh, you're looking good today, or you're looking happy today, or you sounded bad today. How will you empathize, and how would you feel if that were me, unless you can read emotions?
Mm-hmm.
So another simple thing is start talking emotions more naturally with your kids. Not like at 6:00 we're doing emotional literacy, but weave it in. Watch the movie Inside Out. Or as you're watching a show with your kid, wow, she looks really upset. Look at how she's holding her body. We discovered that emotional literacy not only is the gateway to reducing stress, because now the kid can come up to you with the words and say, I'm feeling stressed, Mom, or I'm feeling frustrated. Boy, that's wonderful. But the second thing, it opens his heart up to another child. You can also do something. Our children have been so in front of a screen that they haven't been exercising their social skills. 3 most highly correlated traits of kids who are socially competent. They wave and say hello. You can still wear a mask and smile with your eyes, but if you model that, parent, you're helping your child regain that sense of what they now have is social anxiety. Be encouraging. Watch the Olympic Games and how teammates encourage each other, or watch the football games on how everybody at that Super Bowl, the teammates were saying good job and hugging each other. When you're playing chutes and ladders, one of your rules is you got to encourage dad at least 3 times. And pretty soon your child will be able to use that in real life. Introduction. Hi, my name is. Those skills our kids had a couple of years ago. Most counselors and teachers are saying it's sort of in dormant mode. Mm-hmm. So we can take it up by just being a little more natural ourselves with it.
And just, kind of reminding ourselves if we want our kids to be more socially adept, we have to be more socially adept. We've got to make the conscious effort. And when we're all working from home, we can't just assume that our social skills our skills have socially atrophied as well, because we haven't been around people as much. Hey,
we all have. We're in social skill atrophy mode, and we're in loneliness mode, but there's a solution to it. As soon as we can, we reinstate the play date. So that's okay. You can still do them at a safe distance, but you kids have got to see each other. That's why they say that they're so lonely at school, because they're so anxious about, how do I say hi?
And do you think some of the anxiety is not so much that the kids themselves are anxious, but they're feeding off the parents' anxiety?
Oh, yes. What we do know, this is back to the science. The American Academy of Pediatrics wanted to know what are the most effective things we can do as parents to get the best turnarounds for our kids. And they looked at thousands of data on parenting. They came up with 10. Number 1 is no brainer. We love the kid and we get the structure. But the second most highly correlated skill of effective parenting is the parent has stress management themselves.
Mhm.
If you don't, your stress mirrors over to the kids, and what they're doing is picking up on our stress. They need a mirror of calmness. I know it's hard, but we've got to practice that 1-2 breathing for our kids'
Yeah.
sake. They're going to be reminding you, take that 1-2 breath, Mom, and that's absolutely cool. But right now, our children are saying that one of the reasons that they are anxious is they desperately want to please us.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, they don't want to disappoint us. And they're worried. They want approval. Tell me that I'm a good person for just who I am. Don't just comment on my grades, Mom. I'm really worried about my grades right now, but just say you love me for who I am. It's another simple little thing we can do.
Yeah, the people are not their performance. I think particularly in Western culture, we're very performance driven. That like we are our results.
Mm-hmm. Well, what we want our kids to be are victors, not victims.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with adversity. Many kids will raise the white flag and succumb. And that is an immense tragedy that will jeopardize their health, their happiness, their well-being, put them up for trauma. What we do know is we can't protect them of who's going to get a traumatic event hitting their lives.
Yeah.
But all of the research and the science says if we give kids protective buffers along the way, we can help. Here's another one. We also need to help our kids learn to be assertive.
Mm-hmm.
That's positively assertive, and that doesn't mean you're bullying another kid. It means you're sticking up for yourself or for others. And when we look at assertive kids and skills, it's back to empathy. Fascinating. First, here's another simple little skill you can do. I teach CALM, CALM, to help kids be less likely to become a victim or be bullied. C is, we now know that bullies are selective on who they choose.
Yep.
They look for kids who look more vulnerable. So the first thing is, if you cry, you whine, you pout, you hold your head over, you look like you're a victim, you're going to be an easier target. The fastest way is take the slow breath, not in front of the bully, but take a moment. Do you need to walk? Do you need to turn? But get yourself calm so you look calm. And the second thing is, hold your head up high. Mm-hmm. Look at the color of the talker's eyes. Look at the victim. Look at the bully. In your own home, when your child is talking, because they're looking down, not up. They've been facing a screen forever. You'll never look confident. You'll never look like you can hold your own if you look down. Always look at the color of the talker's eyes. For a shy kid, tell him to look right here at the bridge of the kid's nose. L is C-A-L is just look, but A is assert yourself. C is calm. A is assert. That means maybe brainstorm some assertive lines at home over and over again, like stop it, cut it out, or move on. If you're really shy, you just put up your hand and move on and say no. But M is, if you're going to assert yourself, practice what a strong voice sounds like. Mm-hmm. It isn't whiny. It isn't pouty. It's stop it. Stop it. Which one do you think your friend is going to listen to, or a bully would listen to? What we've discovered is, of all the strategies I teach kids, and I do a lot of middle school assemblies, that's the one. Stay cool, be assertive, or say a couple of lines, look like you mean it, and make your voice sound like you mean it. Kids say, thank you. I didn't know what to do. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that will be particularly useful with kids coming back to school with parents modeling all this crazy behavior on planes and in neighborhoods.
Yes.
Some kids are going to come into school like, okay, well, I guess that's just how you behave as a bully.
Yeah.
And the kids need to be prepared to deal with people who don't know how to function in a community.
I think what parents, just to segue exactly what you said, what teachers are seeing is incivility breaking down. Kids are ruder. Bullying is going up. And a lot of the time when we say, where are they getting it? Well, we need to step in and say, nope, that's not how you act in this house. Or nope, that's not how adults should be acting out there or around. This is how we act, because we have got to take back civility. It breaks down our school culture. There goes the safe and caring place. There goes inclusivity. It's a tragedy that's happening. But again, we've got some control. You can also have control of around other kids. It doesn't have to be just your kid. Get on board with other like-minded parents. You can just get on the phone and say, hey, we're concerned about this. Here's what we're doing. Or maybe there's one skill. Some of the coolest things I'm seeing is assertive skills, or the 1+3, or anything that we've been talking about today. Parents are getting a couple of other parents with same-aged kids, and they're working on it together.
Yeah. And then I think the kids feel like it's not, I'm not the target. Maybe it's we as opposed
Yep.
to me. And they're not going to
Yeah.
want to isolate. At least they have someone to go to, another kid of like, hey, Billy's bullying me. What do we, let's work together on it.
Well, and
Let's
that's
travel together.
the piece that you will find, that the reason that I center so much on empathy is the best hope we have in our schools are upstanders, kids who stick up for one another. And that's always based on empathy. You teach kids what are things you can do if your friend is being treated unfairly, or there's racial injustice, or he's being bullied. But kids say, I don't like it. I get so upset. What can I do? And there's simple things. One of the simplest things that middle school kids go, my gosh, I never thought about that. Don't stand next to the bully. You're giving him power. He wants power. Stand over next to the victim. You will draw an audience from that kid just over to there. You don't have to say a thing, but the bully begins to see the power's over here, not there. You can also tell your kid, always go up to the child who was victimized after the fact. You didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
Do you need help? What can I do for you? Use your empathy and teach kids how to care. Don't assume they know the words or what they can do, but it's never too late after the fact to help somebody in distress.
Yep. And even if it's, let me walk with you to class.
Exactly. Do you need me help? I can walk you to the teacher to report this. Would you like me to fill out a form with you? What do you need? I'll walk with you to the playground, to have lunch with you. Anything. But that's what empathy does. It makes our kids, I think it's a superpower.
I think it does more than help kids. It helps when adults are empathetic as well.
Oh my gosh. It helps the whole society. It's the glue that holds the society together.
Absolutely. So was there a particular motivation that got you to write Thrivers?
Kids. I was doing, and I've always done this, was doing speeches across the country and around the world and, to schools. But I began to do something that was kind of interesting for me. In order to get a pulse on each school, I'd ask the staff if they would let me have a focus group before I went into the school and just listen to what the kids were saying. They're so open. If you really want a solution, ask a kid. They'll tell you the solution and they'll tell you what it is. But what I began to see is that the kids were really concerned. They felt empty. They were worried about themselves. They were worried about each other. They said their stress level is at an all-time high. I think it was at a middle school that I was sitting there doing a focus group, and it happened to be on the table behind me, a puzzle. And I kept asking the kids, what's the cause of what all this anxiety that you're facing? And one kid looked at the puzzle and said, that. I said, what? He said, well, you see there's some missing pieces on that puzzle? I said, yeah. He says, well, that's what's happening to us. We're missing some pieces. I said, like what? He says, the human stuff. How to stand up, how to be cool, how to do, not the stuff on how to be a good test taker. We're really good at that.
Yeah.
We need the other side. And that's what's really making us stress. We don't know how to read each other anymore. We've been looking down, not up. Oh my gosh, the kids were so eloquent. But the term I heard over and over that made me really write this book was that from kids to teachers to counselors to 2,500 college counselors said they're empty. There's a new breed coming in. This is the smartest generation on record. They're actually more inclusive. They're a wonderful kids, but they're empty. And we've got to revamp that if we want this pandemic generation to thrive, and we can.
I love it. We'll definitely make sure to link to the book on Amazon. I'm sure it's available everywhere. Michele, if people want to find you online, where can they find you online?
Oh, thank you. I'm a MicheleBorba.com. I'm a Michele with one L, and Borba rhymes with Zorba. There you go. MicheleBorba.com. Thrivers is in paperback, but it's also in audio and Kindle form. If any of those you want on Amazon or anywhere else. I think the other thing that's really interesting is that across the country, book clubs are setting up. And it could be a wine and cheese or a coffee or just parents talking about how do we raise up a different generation? How are we going to help our kids thrive? The starter point to all of this is just talking about the why.
Yep.
The need for it. And we will become intentional if we realize there are solutions to this.
That is absolutely perfect. We need to be intentional. Michele, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
You are so welcome. I so enjoyed this, Chris.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Easy Pray podcast. If you found this episode beneficial, share this episode with someone you know and leave a review at easypray.com/review. Notes and a transcript of this episode with Dr. Michele Borba can be found at easypray.com/112.